Thanks, Mark, for joining me.
My pleasure, Zach. Good to see you.
Yeah, so as the weather gets really, really cold around here, I'm sure you're walking into this with a grin, right? Being able to
Yes,
step out in the warm and sunny beach here in a little bit.
yes, I am certainly looking forward to that.
Oh, I bet that's got to be nice. I'm envious of you, but I'll be with you in spirit. How's that?
Sounds good. Sounds good. You're welcome.
All right. So what I kind of want to talk, a little bit about today is really just take a chat or have a little chat about where we're going kind of in the digital world in 2021. I know we have talked kind of a lot about this in the past, how agents, how they do business is often has not been in a line with where consumers really want to do business. So both of us have kind of, over the years, especially at Diversified Insurance, we had seen a lot of where the buyers, how they wanted to interact with us. And so I wanted to take some time to just get your thoughts and kind of just our experience working with the digital consumer and what that kind of looks like here in the modern digital world of doing business.
Yeah, I we've talked about this extensively and through our own experiences. There was an old term. It was called banker's hours. I don't know if you're too young to remember the term banker's hours.
I remember you referring to the term banker's
Well,
hours.
thank you for reminding me of my age. But banker's hours was the euphemism for meaning that you were never available when somebody needed you. Banks used to be closed at lunch. They used to be closed at 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So anybody that had a paycheck had to miss work to cash. I mean, it was banks used to be developed to provide services strictly for their convenience, and insurance agencies weren't that far off the beaten path. We opened at 8 or 9 and we closed at 5, and we felt that the world came to an end. Now, if somebody's house was on fire, usually through a complicated process, they could track somebody down to the agency. But if you think right now, one of the most popular commercial pitch men out there is Jake. Do you know who Jake is?
Jake from State Farm.
Jake from State Farm, and he started. The most memorable commercial was the wife being suspicious because the husband was talking to somebody in the middle of the night. And so that drove home the fact that State Farm, who was always your good neighbor in the neighborhood, they got onto the fact that people are shopping at their convenience at their time. And we found when we were doing business with our agency prior to selling our agency is we found that a significant amount of our activity, well over 70% of our activity, happened after banker's hours. So in excess of, it usually hovered between 70 and 76% every month of our leads came in outside of normal operating hours.
Yeah. It was surprising how many people called or requested information commercially from Friday at 5:30 thinking, oh crap, boss wanted me to have this done. Or to
Well,
have it done for the weekend,
and
just
and even when you're the boss, depending on what your niche is. Uh, for example, my wife asked me last week. She says, "Did you cancel the subscription to a service that I was supposed to cancel?" Well, that happened when we were conversationally sitting back, getting ready to watch the news. That wasn't during normal business hours that I reacted to her 15th request then at that time.
yeah. So, I'm there too, I think being, marketing consultants, or I think a lot of people being insurance agents, they have that time where, if I have to call the electric during normal business hours, you can kind of do that. But, I was talking with a client the other week, and, we're planning our marketing strategy, and it's like, all right, so who do you want to go after? Well, contractors. And so we're planning this email campaign, and he wanted us to go out, 8 or 9. I'm like, aren't they on the truck already at the work site? He's like, well, yeah. So, when are they going to call you during this time? Well, no. So why contact them like let's have it go out 6 in the morning while they're getting ready, or 6:30 when they're coming home. And it's just that thought of, oh yeah, I didn't even think about the actual consumer. I just wanted them to get
He's,
my email.
it's the old habit of developing the strategy around the business, not the business you're trying to get, but the business that you're in, trying to develop strategies around that. And that's not a best practice. Your best practice is to be where they are when they're there, and to be able to respond to them immediately when they're interested in you, and to make sure that you have a way to keep in touch with them when they're available. So it's the old term omni-channel distribution. Is if somebody wants to get a hold of you on the phone, find out a way to do that. If somebody wants to get a hold of you on a landing page on your website, make sure that it's available to do that. By email, make sure that you're available to do that. And you and I have talked that we're going to have several discussions coming up to share uh, on what are some best practices for nurturing. What are the best practices for when somebody does look at you? What should you do now? And what effect will it be for you to wait until your next banker hour versus now?
Yeah. So that does bring up a good point. And we'll talk more strategy here, probably a little bit, but if not, definitely in a video here pretty soon. But let me just ask though, because just from our conversation, it kind of sounds like agents should be on all the time. So I guess, what do you think? I mean, do you think the banker's hours, do you think being open 9 to 5, some agencies occasionally on a Saturday still works? Or do you think agents should be working all the time, or evenings, early mornings? I mean, what are your thoughts?
Well, the answer is that you should be working 24 hours a day, and find ways to make that possible without being too intrusive. With the use of technology, do you have the tools in your tool belt to respond immediately to somebody? Do you even know that they're looking at you? So, in other words, do you have a tool that tells you that they're looking at you? Do you have tools to respond to them when they actively try to engage with you? And those are things that you should be having as automatic email response. The ability to have whomever, whether it's the sales manager or if it's a specific campaign, the individual sales rep, to be notified that somebody is interested in them. I found, going back, and our technology that we're using now is superior to what we were using 10 years ago. But I got notified whenever there was a lead. And it's amazing how people respond to the fact that if it was 10 o'clock at night and I was just doing nothing more than watching the third quarter of a boring football game, to respond immediately saying, hey, listen, I'm not at the office right now. Would it be okay to contact you tomorrow at 10 a.m.? An individual response took me 45 seconds. And in many cases, that closed the door where they didn't even go anyplace else.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had the same experience. I remember we had a giant tree limb, basically hanging over our neighbor's small house. And, we called, we're like, called a company, they didn't answer. Called another company, they didn't answer, And then we finally called somebody, guy picks up a cell, is like, yeah, we'll take care of it. We'll swing by. We can't come right now, but we'll swing by and we'll take a look at it. And then he just took the time to tell us, like, hey, honestly, if it's in the alley where it's located, the city might have to pay for it. So that was great. Come to find out, he came, they took care of it, never got a bill for it. So just being able to say, pick up the phone, talk to us for 30 seconds and say, hey, here's what's probably going to look like, and here's when we're going to come. Like, you don't have to call anybody after that. So,
well, and let's circle back to Jake from State Farm. State Farm built their brand on being a good neighbor, being in the neighborhood. Well, the neighborhood now is a digital neighborhood. And what you just said, resonates so much. My own personal experiences is when I once needed an electrician, I made several calls. And then when I got a call, they said, we can be out there in 3 hours. I said, great. That was going to be the end of when I called them. Well, they actually called and they said they could be there 90 minutes earlier. And when they showed up, I found out that they were almost 100 miles away. But the thing is the guy that was right around the corner was not a good neighbor.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's take a second. Let's break this down. What this actually looks like, because agents are probably thinking, or anybody watching the video is probably thinking, that sounds great, but where does that process start? Is this salespeople, or is this marketing? How does it kind of bring in? So I guess let's take a second. Let's kind of break down what how we brought people in, how they interacted with us, and kind of how that came to be. So I know for us, we were everywhere, which is kind of good and bad. We were kind of testing the water, so we were everywhere, but it also meant people were coming from all areas, right? So we had people coming on Google, we had people coming, we were sending out emails, and plus we had producers who were out there selling.
Well, when we started doing this as an insurance agency, we were kind of early to the game. So we were able to gain access to page one of Google on a lot of different types of products. So that did bring us a variance. So I think now the rules have changed a little bit, that you have to be more focused. I think one mistake that I see from a lot of agents is they just, shotgun approach, that they just, shoot out a wide array and they don't focus in enough. So they send a owner's message to a CFO, or they send a owner's message to a director of human resources, or they send, they send the wrong message to the wrong audience. And then they also are all over the place, that one day they're talking about cyber liability and the next day they're talking about insuring your pet in an auto accident. I think now you have to be more strategic in your approach. And then once you get the attention of the segment of the marketplace, distributing your message on Google, on social media platforms, through email, through paid advertising, using all those different avenues to get your message out there, and then be able to measure to find out where you're getting your best bang. Is it coming to you from social media? Is it coming to you from paid advertising? Is it coming to you from just organic searches that are finding you on your blog? And then devote more resources to that.
Yeah, definitely. And kind of ride that, like, ride that wave, if you will. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm gonna make this blog and then this video and then go on. Like you said, it's not strategic. And if you ask, well, how is this gonna make your phone ring? I don't know. Like, how is this going to help your producers? I don't know. So I really think having the end goal and then kind of reverse engineering that makes a lot of sense. So what do you suggest? I know we've kind of been hinting at a lot of this, but what do you suggest having in place? So for agents who might be hearing this, who are like, well, that sounds good in theory, but the phone's not even ringing. We don't even have anybody calling during business hours, or maybe they are calling outside of business hours and they just don't know. So what do you kind of suggest having in place, that agents can really, the stuff we're talking about, that they can be available 24/7, that they can have an omnipresent presence?
Well, oftentimes I've done a lot of seminars in the past. And a question I asked in a number of seminars is, how many people have planned for their vacation this year? There would be, depending on the time of the year, there'd be a number of hands to be raised. I'd just say, okay, who's got an exciting vacation? And, a couple of raise their hand. I'd call them saying, tell me what, and they would in detail tell me that, well, we're flying into, the Caribbean and we're going to go, snorkeling on day one and deep sea fishing on day two. And we're going out to an extravagant luau on day three. And, they had it all mapped out. And then I said, okay, now ask me, what is your strategy to pay for that vacation? Blank. That a lot of people just repetitively do. Zach, last week we were talking to a couple of agents, and they said what we hear oftentimes is they get caught up so much in the day-to-day activities that they lose the idea that the mission, they feel that they've turned into a service organization, and insurance agencies are sales organizations. So the idea is to first sit down and look at what, as you said, reverse engineer. I want to go to the Caribbean. How am I going to get there? And it should go all the way back to, the minutia of what does every teammate contribute? So from what's the goal, all the way down to what does this person contribute on Monday? What does the other person contribute on Tuesday? And that's a long about answer, but at the end of the day, I think you find out what people are going to contribute each day, building the automobiles every day, the same repetitive things over and over again, and then having the tools to be able to measure and to hit those strategies. So have a tool that tells you this is who was looking at you yesterday. Having a tool that tells you you did 5 things last month and these 2 things work and these 3 things flopped. And so you can stop spending resources on those 3 things that flopped. So, get the automation in place, but before you have the automation, you have to have a vision and a plan. Then you can build off of that.
Yeah. And I think, it took me a long time to get to the maturity of being able to realize, some things are going to work for us and some things aren't. And realizing that, there's a lot of strategies out there that they work for some agencies and they don't work for others. And I think a lot of agents get caught up in the, well, so-and-so's doing this and so-and-so's doing that. And well, let's focus on what's going to work for you and what your consumers want and what your niches are, and really focus on that, and not being pulled into, well, so-and-so is doing Instagram, so I want to do that. And so-and-so is doing video, so I want to do that. And they're doing TikTok, so now let's do that. So, and really fine tuning that and saying, hey, we only have so much manpower. We only have so many resources.
Well, and you, again, in popular icons, right now there's a guy who's having his 15 minutes of fame because he was riding a skateboard singing a song by, what's the name of the band? Fleetwood Mac.
Yes.
Okay. So what you just said is an epitome of so he got, 27 million hits, and now he's become a social influencer and he's gotten money and he's made fame. So everybody says, I'm going to do that. Well, the skateboard has already been skated.
Yeah.
So, find your niche that you're comfortable with and, sing a Beatles tune.
Definitely.
Or for you 50 Cents or Eminem or whatever's more recent.
Yeah. Well, 50 Cent's probably even old now, but
so is Eminem. So is Eminem. Yeah.
So we talked a lot about marketing and kind of attracting consumers. So I kind of want to switch gears just ever so slightly. But I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about how sales plays into all this, because what I see a lot is we're like, okay, marketing has to do all this stuff and we're going to change our agency digitally, but we're going to leave sales exactly how it is. Do you think that's okay? Or do you think sales should evolve as, we start to develop this omnipresent agency as we start to,
I think that it's kind of blended a little bit more than it ever has been. It starts with marketing. That being said, while sales is waiting for marketing to kick it in, they still have to be traditional and bang on doors and pick up phones and network and do all the things that are traditionally known for sales. I think where marketing ends is when they bring the attention and develop what is everybody recognized to be a qualified type of prospect. So, once we've reached the stage where we agree that this is qualified, the handoff should be to sales. Now, one of the things that I think has changed is there's so much behind behavior. I think what's different about sales nowadays is you have to keep score. You have to follow standardized procedures. And by standardized procedures, even in an agency, even in a small agency, the procedure might be different for a business to consumer prospect versus a business to business consumer prospect. But you should have established protocols and established workflows. What's an acceptable callback time? What's an acceptable time to market the account? What's an acceptable time to propose? What's an acceptable percentage to close? What are the communication standards along the way? So, and then with that being said, then marketing comes back into the flow. Is they have to develop the content to support that salesperson, to nurture the prospect. If if you're dealing with a complex business to business account, you're going to have to communicate them through the sales process. And so having marketing support that with nurturing. And then there's a situation where the account comes on board or the account does not come on board, and marketing jumps back in to help nurture after the sale. We were successful, to welcome them to the business and stay in communication and make them more joined to the business or the agency. And then the other situation is we weren't successful, but you know what? We really wish we were. So you have to nurture them and support that sales process, that we stay in touch with that prospect to when it comes around and comes another time at the bat, you're ready to hit the ball.
Yeah. And I do think as well, there needs to be consistency between the marketing message and what sales is doing. And again, a lot of that comes to, looking at the appropriate data. If somebody spent 4 hours on your website looking at different cyber materials, don't pick up the phone and say, hey, let me talk to you about your business owner's policy, lead with cyber. And I had an experience. I won't say any names, but certain weatherproofing company came and knocked on the door, and they do it every year, every spring. Hey, is there anything we can look at? Any cracks in your foundation? Blah blah blah. And so one year I'm like, you know what? I'll have them go through, and they had this checklist of, hey, here's the thing that they'll go through and look for. So I'm like, all right, that's fine. So we scheduled a day. The person came by. Person didn't look at anything on the checklist. He came in, and then he tried to sell us something that wasn't even in line with the initial reason that I actually wanted them to come in. And so having that, I think, turns people off. It's like, okay, marketing attracted them because of this area, and sales just said, I know what I'm doing. I'm gonna take it in the in this total other direction. And it just, sometimes that can be good if the consumer doesn't know what they're looking at, but it also leaves a really bad taste in their mouth. It's like, hey, the only reason I contacted you was because I was interested in this, and you didn't even talk about it. You didn't even mention it. So,
yeah, and you just talked about something where there's a disconnect. And again, marketing and sales have to work together. We've been talking recently about the difference between the sales funnel and the sales journey. And you were at a stage on the sales journey where you were still early in the consideration stage, and you were hoping that the guy would come back and address the one thing that sparked your mind, but yet he jammed you down through a traditional sales funnel. It was like, to hell with step number 2. I'm going right to step number 4. And I'm going to tell you about how you're killing your kids with black mold.
That's exactly what he said.
Yep. So that was a great point there. The fact is making sure that your staff has a consistent message, that everybody's educated and realize it, but make sure that you know where they are on that nuanced journey, so you know where to sit and supply them in the funnel. So again, and we've, in the different parts of the journey, matching up with the sales funnel is, when somebody's still early in the consideration stage, try to figure out, what were you interested in? Was it a dampness smell, or was it just, did you saw some bubbling of the paint? Find out what attracted your attention to that call, and feed you more information about that. And then, oh, by the way, that black mold is going to kill your children. So if it's only the bubbles that caught you, it's a wonderful thing that those bubbles caught you, because I just saved your kid's life. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I'll leave that there because that was great. So, lastly, I kind of wanted to move into a direction which I don't really want to leave this call without talking about it. Is obviously let's address the elephant in the room, which is COVID, right? I know we've talked about a lot of COVID in the past, in some past videos, especially during it. So I know a lot of areas are starting to see, or there's still this kind of things are unsure. Some people are like, yeah, we're gonna go back. Some people are like, yeah, it's never gonna go back. So let's take this from a realistic point of view. We know COVID's changed things, not just physically, but I think it's also changed the mentality of a lot of consumers. And so let's just talk about and as well as the marketplace. So let's talk a little bit about, going into 2021, um, which yay, we're finally out of 2020. What does that look like? Like, what should agencies be looking towards? What should we be doing? How should we be approaching consumers in the kind of COVID era of digital?
Well, that's a great point. Here's the thing is there's a lot of agencies a lot of businesses were caught off guard when COVID hit, and it's a new reality. And interestingly enough, some of the ways that we've always been doing business for the past number of years helped us to adapt, even though we were kind of concerned in the beginning. The idea is meeting consumers where they're going to be. And now that we've trained them that this is where we are, even when things are fine, people are still going to have been trained. The new habit is going to be meeting people in a new way. And with that, I've got a couple of ideas I want to share with you on meeting people digitally, because that really, I think, and really it makes sense. I had lunch with a young producer a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about how he inherited a book of business that he's trying to save. And the previous producer is actually trying to pirate the business back. And he's running all over. In COVID, he's driving all over Northwest Ohio. And I said, if you meet people with videos, I said, imagine the gas that you would save. And the fact is that you can meet with 6 smaller accounts in a morning and then have a record of it. So I wanted to share some ideas because it boils down to video, just like we're meeting today, and creating this into a video. Is a couple things you should keep in mind is the fact that video is with us. It's the way people are going to do business in the future. Now, there will be a pendulum swing where people are going to want to hug and get back together. But when they realize the convenience of doing business this way, it's going to stay this way. So a couple things I think keep in mind is keep your message short, especially if you're doing videos. Keep your message short and on point. Especially when people are in the consideration phase, don't get too deep in the weeds. Try to hit the high points. And again, keep it concise. Maybe split your message up into several different chapters. Make it like a Netflix series of information. Make it, when you're going to meet with people this way, make it easy for them to meet with you. It's amazing how many people just freak out over something as simple as, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to meet on it. Well, listen, I sent you an email. Just click on that long blue link there and make sure that you have your pants on. Because when the camera turns on, we want you to have your pants on. So make it easy. Make it, there's so many tools out there where you can send a simple invite link that will also drop it right into people's Google Calendar, right into their Microsoft Office calendar. Make it easy for them to meet. Make your time with them engaging. It's tough because when you still have the body language with this, but you can only get this much of my body language. So I'm furiously, so the idea is make it engaging. One of the things that I'm not doing right now is I've got just blank walls behind me, but I watched a documentary earlier, and it's a guy who's a historian, and I showed him in his house, and he goes down into the basement, and I mean into the basement. He walks into this room that he's turned into his basement into a studio, and he sits down, and he's got this clicker, and he clicks the button, all of a sudden the screen TV behind him is a bookshelf. And it shows that like he's sitting in a library, he's sitting in his basement. So, is this a good time with tools like Zoom where you can put a background behind you that's your agency logo or the product that you're talking about or something wonderful like that. Is make it engaging, make it people want to talk to you like that. So delight people with virtual meetings, do something different. We use a software package, and we were a loyal customer of one of the biggest software packages in the business, and they got us over lunch. If you remember, they sent us a huge box, and in that box was like a puzzle that you could draw. And when you drew the puzzle, it basically
giant maze. I still have it.
Yeah, and it wrote their name in it, and then they bought us lunch. Now you can't do that for a $45 commission account, but on larger accounts with DoorDash, with Uber Eats, buying lunch send something unusual to them. I actually did that early in my career. I learned it from a sales management class I took, where I just sent out a big piece of matted blackboard, and in the middle I put like a little coupon that says, "This is your ticket for a free lunch." I actually sold, and because it was successful, I stopped doing it. But I actually sold in about a 6 month period. I sold 5 medium-sized accounts by just being different. Well, instead of sending a cardboard, send them an invite where you'll buy them lunch. Uh, so do things that are physical and virtual. So then you're sitting there eating lunch with somebody, even though we're doing it this way.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people do the whole let's meet over Zoom and have a beer together. Let's have a coffee, great lunch, like that kind of stuff. It's fun because it's not just a boring face-to-face meeting. It feels like you're more engaged and interactive.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you don't have to pay for your own lunch, they're more than likely to sit through the meeting.
Now, it might not be professional, but something as stupid as wearing a clown nose. I mean, something that's like, God, you wouldn't believe the guy I talked to. But you know what? Once I got past the clown nose, he knew his stuff. He knew his stuff. So, and then the idea behind that is to continue to engage people, continue to educate people. That's something I'm proud of. What we've done is we share a lot of information as we gather it, we digest it, and bring it back to the people. And so make sure your staff is educated, but make sure your prospects and the general public's educated. Become something of a trusted advisor, and do that through content creation. And it's so easy to do content creation on video.
Yeah, I love what you just said there at the end of be a trusted advisor. How do you do that? Well, you just do what you're supposed to be doing every day. And I love the fact that all this really brings agents back to being what they were initially designed to be. And that's a trusted advisor, educating clients, talking to people, being a resource instead of just being a service center where people call when they think that they know, the changes they need to make for their insurance.
Well, so many of us offer the same thing. One of my favorite quotes is, and the gentleman's no longer with us, but he said, "It's not enough to have people think that you're the best guitar player in the world. You have to make them believe you're the only guitar player in the world." And that's Jerry Garcia that said that, who was a guitar player for the Grateful Dead. Now, when I've used that quote in presentations, I would ask people, can anybody in this room list 5 Grateful Dead songs? And if there was anybody in the class that could list 5 Grateful Dead songs, I had them drug tested at lunch. But the idea behind that is the fact that people know Grateful Dead, they know Jerry Garcia, but they don't know any of his music. But if you know Jerry Garcia, if you love the Grateful Dead, you would skip out on your own wedding reception and drive 6 hours to watch a Grateful Dead concert. I mean, that's how loyal they were. That's what a trusted advisor is making people realize that you are the one that holds the key to the inner sanctum.
Very good, very good. So, Mark, and we covered a lot. So, kind of as we wrap up here, why don't we do this? Why don't you leave us with this? Because we covered a lot. We talked about being omnipresent. We talked about, sales suggestions for what should we be doing, tools. We talked about, going into 2021. So I'm sure, at least at the time we're recording this, it's November, the very beginning of November. I'm sure a lot of agencies, they're planning, they're trying to figure out what the heck, how to move forward in 2021. They're thinking about, hey, should we be doing automation? Should we be doing more video? And they're looking at price tags and they're looking at everything and they're probably feeling a little overwhelmed. So can you leave us with this? Can you maybe give us 3 areas that people should work on getting into, that agencies should focus on or work on getting into 2021?
Well, at this time of the year, it's all about planning. So sit down and start again at the end, or go at 10,000 feet and just slowly bring the plan down. So I say, first of all, is what is your mission, vision, and value? Has it changed? Has it changed because the world has changed? When's the time to revisit it? Sit down and think, why are we here? What is our purpose? And what are our goals? And then sit there and work your way into who's going to help us achieve those goals. we used to use a tool in the agency where everybody had a responsibility, and all those responsibilities went into one report, and we could see where Zach was excelling or Zach was drawing behind. He wasn't on goal, and it helped everybody know what their contribution was. So try to make sure that you come up with a plan that involves everybody, that they know that if they miss a block, the quarterback gets creamed. Or if they jump off sides, it might cost a touchdown. I hate the sports analogies, but it's a team sport. So work on that. And then don't say, we want to grow 10%. Validate the fact that this is how we're going to grow 10%. We're going to talk to this audience. We're going to talk to this audience this often. We're going to reach out this many times. We're going to have this many presentations. We're going to have this many closes. So again, start at what is our mission? Why are we here? All the way down to what am I going to do in the next hour? Work your way backwards. And with that, being self-serving here, we've developed a tool that we'd like to share with people. And that tool is a manuscript that walks you through all the steps on what tools are we going to use, who's going to be responsible for what are we going to go after. And it's a PowerPoint that they can use to develop their own business plan off of.
Very good. So yeah, in the spirit of planning, sit down, figure it out, and make it happen.